Blair Adams' story first aired on Unsolved Mysteries on April 18, 1997. The events that transpired prior to the mysterious death of the British Columbia resident seemed to make no sense at all. He had suddenly exhibited an acute case of paranoia and thought someone was trying to kill him. Authorities who later investigated his death believed that his fear did not stem from anything real. But then, how and why did he end up murdered thousands of miles away? Was it really just psychotic paranoia, or could someone have really tracked him all the way and take his life in cold blood? This is the strange mystery of Blair Adams. Robert Dennis Blair Adams was born on December 28, 1964, and lived in Surrey, British Columbia. He worked as a foreman for his stepfather's construction company, and in late 1995, he returned from a construction project in Frankfurt, Germany, where he had met his girlfriend. Adams' girlfriend described him as a gentleman, but another German colleague described him as an abrasive and confrontational person who sometimes got into fights. By the summer of 1996, everyone could see something was wrong. Adams had battled alcoholism in the past and was 2 years sober at this point, but had stopped attending his Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Everyone liked him, and none of his friends, relatives, or co-workers had a bad word to say about the young man. He was always friendly and optimistic, and he always wore a smile. It seemed that he didn't have an enemy in the world, but in the summer of that year, things began to change. The genial and cheerful outlook began to disappear, and was slowly replaced with mood swings and anxiety. These mood swings were described as frequent and wild. Whatever the source behind this radical change within him, it started to affect his sleep, and he was getting less and less as the summer wore on. Blair's mother noticed the changes taking place with her son, and she asked him what was wrong. He told her, "I don't think I should tell you about it," and he left it at that. On July 5, 1996, Adams went to his bank and withdrew all of his cash totaling $6,000. He also removed the contents of the safety deposit box that included thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, gold and platinum. 2 days later, he arrived at the Canadian-U.S. border and made efforts to enter the U.S. Officials, suspicious of all the cash and valuables that were visible inside his vehicle, border agents suspected that he might have been a drug mule or trafficker, as they denied him access. He was forced to turn back. The next day, he quit his job and then bought an airline ticket for a flight to Frankfurt, Germany, which was due to leave the following Tuesday. Immediately after Blair booked his transatlantic flight, he made his way to a friend's house. When he arrived there without notice, his friend quickly saw that he was highly panic-stricken. He proceeded to ask her if she could take him back to the border to help him get into the States because someone was trying to kill him. However, she was unable to help, and Adams left. At the airport on Tuesday, Adams managed to get his ticket refunded instead of boarding the plane. He instead rented a car and once again made his way to the Canadian-American border. This time, he gained access and drove directly to the Seattle airport, where he bought a ticket for the first flight out, which took him to Washington, D.C. After he landed early on Wednesday, July 9th, the first thing Blair did was rent a vehicle, a Toyota, and drive all the way to Knoxville, Tennessee, over 500 miles to the southwest. Nobody in Knoxville saw the traveler until the early evening, when he stopped at a gas station with apparent car trouble. The attendant at the station diagnosed the problem in an instant. The key that Adams was attempting to use wasn't the correct one for the car he was driving. They searched the immediate area and inside the car found no sign of the Toyota key. Blair suggested that they tow the car to a local motel where he could stay while he waited for another car key from the rental company. Meanwhile, Adams hitchhiked to the motel. CCTV cameras in the lobby of the motel recorded more odd behavior. The guest services representative from the motel described Blair's behavior. The best way to describe him would be paranoid, nervous, agitated, expecting someone to come in on him even when there wasn't anyone there. I don't know who he was waiting for, but he was waiting for somebody to walk in for him at 6:51 p.m. That was the last time anyone saw Blair Adams at that point. The following morning, his body was discovered inside the parking lot about half a mile from that motel. As odd as his final few days of life were, the crime scene evoked even more questions. Someone had ripped open his shirt and had removed his pants. Both of his socks were inside out, and there was around $4,000 in Canadian, American, and German currency laying around his body. Police also discovered a bag of gold and jewels at the scene. The Toyota car keys were laying on the ground about 10 feet away from Adams. His body exhibited a number of cuts and bruises, but the cause of death was a hard blow to his abdomen, which ruptured his stomach. Blair Adams' seemingly haphazard final days are just a single unknown in this utterly bizarre case. When they learned of his passing, none of the immediate family could understand why he would be in Knoxville at all. According to them, Blair didn't know anyone in Knoxville, and he simply had no reason to be there. It is possible that he may have had some connections in Germany, perhaps in light of whatever he thought was happening. He believed that fleeing to Frankfurt might have been in his best interest. Maybe he thought he could lay low in Germany while his problems passed, but then why ask for a refund for the airline ticket? Clearly he thought nothing had changed, since he continued zigzagging across 2 countries trying to outwit someone. The 31-year-old construction foreman had begun doing odd things that shocked those closest to him, leaving his work site unlocked, not picking up his paychecks, paranoid, moody, fearful someone was going to kill him. He even made a reference to one family member or friend that it was going to kill me, end quote. Again, he told anyone who would listen that someone wanted him planted 6 feet under and that he had to get into the U.S. According to Adam's mother, he was a kind and ambitious man. She alluded to the fact that he once had a very hidden romantic relationship with another man that he had mentioned to her. She added that her son had hoped to attend the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta. Bizarrely, as was mentioned before, Adams had gold bars, gold coins, jewelry, and thousands of dollars in Canadian, US, and German currency on him. None of it had been taken. Why? He had been beaten to death, and his pants had been pulled down and folded inside out, neatly laid out on the asphalt. Adam's socks were on a nearby asphalt, along with his keys. A black duffel bag contained maps and receipts. When his battered remains were discovered, one of his shoes was underneath his head, like a pillow. Some 22 years later, the sordid little death of Blair Adams outside Knoxville, Tennessee remains ice cold. Detectives are as baffled now as they were then. From the start, cops were in a quandary. This guy didn't know a soul in Tennessee, and what was the path that took him from Surrey to a morgue in Knoxville? Every single strand, cough and spit, had been examined and re-examined, then gone over again. An autopsy revealed the blow that killed him, as was mentioned before, ruptured his stomach. The cause of death? Septic shock. Detectives believe a club or a crowbar was used in the grisly homicide. According to the Sentinel, quoting the autopsy report, Adams put up a fight. His hands were bloodied as he defended himself. He also took a blow to the head with a crowbar. A long strand of one of his killer's hairs was found at the scene, and investigators believed Adams had been sexually assaulted, but there was no DNA to back this up. A lone security guard at another site heard a scream around 3:30 a.m. The rent-a-cop thought it sounded like a woman. Detectives followed a winding trail from Canada to Germany, where Adams had worked for his stepfather. Once again, some called him sweet. Others claimed he was abrasive and confrontational and got into fistfights at local watering holes. Back in Knoxville, the last known sighting of Adams was 14 hours before his lifeless body was discovered. A tow truck driver recalled dropping him off at a local Fairfield Inn. His body was discovered across the road. Surveillance video showed him leaving and returning to the hotel 5 times. 2 women told detectives they saw Adams talking to a man at the Cracker Barrel. He has not been identified. Here is a suspect composite drawing. The police theorized Adams was the victim of sexual interaction that suddenly went awry. A truck stop jammed to the rafters with sex workers was nearby. The operating theory has been that the killer was a pimp, a prostitute, or both. To solve the murder of the mysterious Canadian man, Cops believe someone is going to have to sing. And when even unsolved mysteries can't move the needle, you know justice has been delayed, perhaps forever.